So tonight, as we celebrate Pride Shabbat, we'll hear in a few moments from our speaker, Ray Davis. But before we do, I'd like to invite Bob Churkin, who is the chair of our DEI committee here at Share Me, who's going to share a little bit about what we've been doing recently and other things you might want to share, Bob. Anything, whatever comes to mind. The floor is yours.
Can I move this out?
Yeah, do you want to stand on the floor? Yeah, good. You can probably stand it up. Yeah.
That should do it.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. This is the flag that that's the new one. Well, it's okay. You might as well see the new one because this is going to be, most of us are familiar with the 8 stripes, and this is coming, and I'll explain more about that later. We had a great time, if you can have a great time and I assure you there were a lot of people there right along with us. About 6 months ago, Natalie Standing, Sarah Sharma, and I began to think about participating in the 2024 New Hope Pride Parade. That seemed like a logical next step for us, for the committee to take on, and fortunately, Rabbi Briskin, Rabbi Eric, as well as Stephanie and the board agreed with us. All were in agreement that this was another way we could support and celebrate our LGBTQ families and friends. Natalie was the persistent point person, reaching out to the volunteer Pride office in New Hope, getting the details, obtaining the applications, submitting them in advance, and making sure that everyone had all the information about when to arrive, where to park, and the route we'd be walking. The parade was a go, rain or shine. The good news is Saturday, May 18th was a sunny day. We, the 40 participants from Share Me, and the other roughly 1,500 participants, representing Pride organizations, churches, synagogues, gymnastic groups, bands, and people on decorated floats, were there also, all enthusiastically marching in the 21st Pride Parade in Lambertville and New Hope, supporting their LGBTQ families and friends. And the thousands of people that lined the streets in both towns were just as enthusiastic, cheering as we passed by, waving, dancing, and singing to the music, people of all ages and colors, queer and straight. It was a truly great celebration. Personally, I'll never forget the 5-year-old boy who caught my eye as I walked by where he was standing with his parents, and his expression on his face when I handed him one of our flags. Just for the record, there was definitely a police presence at the parade. And over the 4+ hours we were there were no incidents and no concerns for our safety. By now, we're all familiar with the Pride flag and the 6 colorful stripes on it. The New Hope Pride Committee actually has its own 100-foot version of the same flag. But how many of you know what each color stands for? I'm glad I included this. Red represents blood, the life force of the body. Orange stands for healing. Yellow represents sunlight plus new ideas and thought. Green stands for nature, a healing place as well as prosperity and growth. Indigo blue represents serenity, feeling calm and serene. And violet purple connects us with the spiritual world. I hope this has helped you better understand the current pride flag, but you know there's a new pride flag, this one, as luck would have it. It includes the colors brown and black. And there's a reason for that. These colors have been added to represent the people who founded the movement. People of color and trans people have had a very difficult time gaining recognition and accessing services. This has been a long-standing problem. Pride groups continue to evolve to better understand their community and to become more fully inclusive of their friends and families. One last thing. On June 18th, Netflix will begin airing a show called Outstanding, a comedy revolution. I saw a clip of it this morning, and I'm betting that our LGBTQ friends and families share much of the same sense of humor about their daily lives as the rest of us. I highly recommend it. I'm sure it'll be on other nights beyond June 18th. Now I'm going to ask Rabbi Briskin to introduce our keynote speaker, Ray Davis, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Bob, for the extraordinary work that you do. Sarah Sharma, who leads this committee with you. Again, thank you, Natalie, for putting so much together for this evening as well. So I'm really thrilled to welcome here to share me, Ray Davis. Ray is the community health educator for Planned Parenthood Keystone and the Rainbow Room, which is the only LGBTQIA+ youth center here in Bucks County. They have a center in Doylestown and one in Langhorne as well. It is the work that you are doing, Ray, we know is so important and so vital for our LGBTQ youth in our community. And we're really thrilled to have you here to speak with us. And also want to thank John Stevens, who sits on the board of Planned Parenthood of Bucks County, for helping to arrange Ray's visit with us tonight. I'm just very, very grateful. So thank you, John. And with no further ado, Ray Davis.
Oh, I feel so tall.
That's why I stand in the first step, too.
So some of this might be a little redundant, but good evening, everyone. My name is Ray Davis. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm 29 years old. I serve as a community health educator at Planned Parenthood Keystone, and I help run our LGBTQ+ youth center in Bucks County, the Rainbow Room. Established in 2002, the Rainbow Room was created to address the lack of support for LGBTQ+ youth in schools. It remains the only LGBTQ+ youth center in Bucks County, providing a vital lifeline for young people in our community. The Rainbow Room offers 3 weekly programs. This is the boring part. I'm going to tell you about when our programs are so that if you know anybody, they can come. On Tuesdays, we meet in Langhorne for ages 14 to 21, Wednesdays in Doylestown for ages 14 to 21, and on Thursdays in Doylestown, we have Roy G. Biv, which is Rainbow Room Junior for ages 10 to 14. We provide honest sexuality education, recreational activities, community building, and activism. The Rainbow Room is a welcoming and supportive space, offering LGBTQ+ youth a sense of community and comfort, much like I sought when I was a queer teenager. When I think back to my own teenage years, I remember the sense of isolation and confusion I often felt. Finding a community where I could be myself without fear of judgment would have been life-changing. This is why spaces like the Rainbow Room are so crucial. They offer not only support and resources, but also a sense of belonging that can make all the difference in a young person's life. I am honored to be here with you this evening as we usher in Pride Month, a month that began not with celebration, but with protest. Pride Month commemorates the Stonewall riots of June 1969, when members of the LGBTQ+ community stood up against systemic oppression and discrimination. This pivotal moment in history laid the groundwork for the modern LGBTQ+ rights movement. We are reminded that rights and freedoms we enjoy today, many of which are being challenged again, were won through the struggle and sacrifice. The bravery of those who participated in the Stonewall riots cannot be overstated. They faced violence and persecution, yet they stood their ground. Their courage set into motion a movement that has made significant strides over the past decade. As we celebrate Pride, we must remember that our celebrations are rooted in their fight for justice. As we gather this evening for this service and reflect on the progress we have made, let us also consider the work that still needs to be done. While learning pronouns and hanging a pride flag outside are wonderful steps, we must critically examine the values we hold and how fiercely we want to protect them in our lives. I encourage each of you to ask yourself, what am I doing to protect queer people in my life? What am I doing to learn more? What do I understand? What am I doing to ensure that those not just in my own community, but beyond, have access to the support they need? What power do I have? About 10 years ago, I came out as non-binary. I was dating someone in college who innocently asked me how I felt about being a woman. I remember not knowing how to answer, realizing it wasn't something I had ever really thought about. I didn't consider myself a woman. I realized I didn't have the language to explain what I was feeling. The way I felt about my gender wasn't what I saw depicted on TV when they talked about trans people. I didn't feel like I was in the wrong body. I didn't want to be a girl, but I didn't want to be a boy. I just wanted to be. The journey to understanding my identity was not an easy one. I often felt lost and confused, not seeing my experience reflected anywhere around me. The more I learned about my identity, the more I realized that other people might understand me less. Compared to many, I came out at a relatively young age, and even though that was only 10 years ago, our understanding of LGBTQ+ issues and terminology was vastly different. Pronouns were not commonly discussed, and for many of my fears, I was the first non-binary person they ever knew. This sometimes made me feel like a spectacle. Even now, I sometimes still feel that way. I remember the first time I explained my pronouns to a group of friends. The reactions ranged from confusion to support to outright dismissal. It was a challenging experience, but it taught me the importance of patience and education. Over time, I've seen more acceptance and understanding grow within my circles, but it is a continuous journey. Now, many years later, I have found myself becoming a queer adult, something I never thought would happen. My generation was deprived of the privilege of having access to queer adults in large part due to the AIDS epidemic, which ravaged queer communities and had a long-lasting impact. The epidemic not only took away countless lives, but also silenced voices and erased role models who could have guided and supported us. The absence of these elders meant that many of us grew up without the presence of LGBTQ+ mentors to show us that living a full and authentic life as a queer person was possible. This gap in generational knowledge and support has made our journey more challenging, but it has also strengthened our resolve to be visible and vocal for our next generation. While we have made significant strides in advancing LGBTQ+ rights, it is crucial to recognize that LGBTQ+ youth today still face significant challenges. Many young people continue to encounter bullying, discrimination, and rejection from their families, schools, and communities. These experiences can lead to higher rates of mental health issues such as depression and anxiety, as well as increased risk of homelessness and substance abuse. In addition, LGBTQ+ youth often struggle with access to affirming healthcare and mental health services. Transgender and non-binary youth in particular face barriers to receiving gender-affirming care, which is vital to their well-being. Moreover, we are witnessing a disturbing rise in legislation aimed at restricting the rights of LGBTQ+ individuals, especially targeting queer youth. Across various states, laws are being proposed and enacted that ban gender-affirming healthcare for minors, restrict discussions of LGBTQ+ topics in schools, and limits the rights of transgender students to use facilities that align with their gender identity. These anti-LGBTQ+ laws not only jeopardize the mental health and physical health of queer youth, but also send a harmful message that their identities are not valid or worthy of protection. Despite these obstacles, LGBTQ+ youth demonstrate incredible resilience and strength. It is our collective responsibility to support them, advocate for their rights, and create environments where they can thrive. By providing safe spaces like the Rainbow Room and being proactive allies, we can help ensure that LGBTQ youth feel valued, understood, and empowered. As we celebrate Pride Month, let us honor the progress we have made while acknowledging the work that remains. Let us draw strength from our shared history and our unwavering belief in the power of love, justice, and community. Thank you.
So I think that folks got some index cards when you came in. Is that right? Did folks get the cards when you came in? Okay, so what we want to do is so Ray can answer a few questions, but what we like to do is basically if you have a question, jot it down on the card. I'm going to try to consolidate them all together, and then we can try to ask 2 or 3 questions or something like that. Okay, rather than so if you have something down there, Bob or someone will pick it up. Okay. There's only 3 of them, a little bit easier, so. You gotta stand up and say it, so. Wasn't sure, so. And just as Bob is collecting some of the cards, I just want to thank Ray for speaking to us, Ray, and just, we know it's just to stand up in front of a room of strangers and share a story, and just with that, just honesty and vulnerability takes just a lot of strength and courage. So I wanted to thank you for sharing so openly. I'm not sure how often you've been asked to do this, so if this is, especially for a group like us, so I want to just really. There you go. Well, you're an excellent speaker, an excellent spokesperson, so, okay. Okay, so we have, all right, so we got 3 questions here, so when you want to come on up so people can hear you, so. Let's see. Okay, so has Planned Parenthood begun any lobbying efforts at the national level to expand the number of Supreme Court justices? Oh, that's a nice easy one, isn't it? You know what? I only saw the lobbying effort. I didn't read the last. I should have read the whole last thing there. So you know what? Do you even want to
I feel like John would know the answer to
actually,
this better than I do, actually.
Well, I mean, obviously we know that Planned Parenthood has been under tremendous amount of attack legislatively and whatnot, and there's things happening in our community. Anything you want to just say about that before I go to the other questions that are more to raise? Yes.
There are any number of issues that Planned Parenthood is lobbying and promoting, and having Ray here is awesome because a lot of this comes down to education.
Right.
People just don't know, and people need to hear it.
Great answer, thank you.
Yeah. So what programs are there for teens? Are there programs, are there support groups for transgender adults? And what are some of the ways that we can be active allies?
Okay.
That's probably more down, that's more in your wheelhouse, right?
So I answered part of that question while
Yeah.
I was speaking, which is, are there groups for LGBT youth? The answer is yes. So as I said, there is in Langhorne, it's I think 5 minutes from here on Bellevue Avenue at the St. James Episcopal Church. We meet every Tuesday for ages 14 to 21. And then in Doylestown, we meet at Salem Church, and that is Wednesdays at 6 to 8 p.m. for ages 14 to 21. Groups specifically for transgender adults I don't know of one other than in Montgomery County called Saga, which offers mental health services and counseling for LGBT people of all ages. And then what was the last one? How to be active.
How can we can be allied? I mean, I know what you said before. It's nice to have buttons and be aware of pronouns and whatnot. But beyond that, what are the ways that we can be allies?
I think the biggest way to be an ally is to be educated. So where are the gaps that you have in your knowledge of things and filling them in? And sometimes you may not know that until you find yourself in a situation where you realize that actually I'm not educated on this topic. So what are you going to do at that point? Are you going to go home and just be like, all right, whatever, I don't have to worry about it? Are you going to buy a book? Are you going to Google it? What's the action step? And I think that's the question with anything, is what action am I going to take next when I see that there's a problem? So if I see that things are happening in my local school board that are attacking LGBT youth, am I going to read all about it, or am I going to go to the school board meetings? Am I going to join a local organization that helps rally for these things? Like, what is your next movement forward, and always thinking about that. And like I said, just filling in those gaps of where you can find progress in yourself.
Thank you. And whenever there's like legislation either here in Pennsylvania or on the federal level as well. I know that when we were in DC, Elliot, there was a piece of legislation, right, that we were lobbying for at Lit Ken. Is that right? That was I forget the specific piece, but there was something that within the Religious Action Center, which is the public policy arm of the Reform movement, and we're a Reform synagogue. A number of issues that we'll lobby for in DC, and Elliot was there with us, one of our teenagers back in February, and it was one of the things that we spoke to our congressperson about. And he listened, he was polite, but there's certainly movement, especially in the areas of mental health services and whatnot. Here's a question about housing. So do you feel the LGBTQ plus community are fairly supported by the current fair housing laws for renting and buying opportunities? Is that, I don't know if you
I think that in general, I think in general housing right now is really difficult to come across and to find any sort of fair housing that is affordable for any person of race, color, creed, gender, sexuality. I can't speak directly to what exactly is in that law. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. So, like, someone had that question. Someone had that question. Yeah.
If you have
John.
any questions about queer youth, I'm really qualified to answer those
Yeah.
questions.
You remember?
I have a queer youth question.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
So, Ray, if somebody wanted to come to the Rainbow,
Yes.
do they just show up?
You just show up.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it's really cool. And I'm there. I'm the bright, shiny, happy, smiley face that greets you when you walk in. And I'm much more comfortable in that setting in terms of like facilitation and policy and questions that are asked. For some reason, teenagers don't intimidate me, which is my superpower. If anybody is wondering, I don't think that they're that scary.
How do most of the kids find you?
A lot of the kids find us through like social media, through their therapists, we're everywhere. We're on Facebook, Instagram. We have just a really great word of mouth sort of setting that, kids find out about us from a friend that comes. We're connected with local GSAs in the area as well. So really, like, any way that we can kind of get the word out about the Rainbow Room, we're actively trying to do. We're at tabling events all of the time. We do things like this where we go places and we speak. We do education and trainings for like Nova and A Woman's Place and other local organizations and agencies that help us spread the word.
Do you do any work in with the local public schools or private schools? I'm not sure if there's any work there. Or also, how do you, in addition to that, what are you hearing from the students and from the youth that are coming to you about what they're experiencing in school? Are some places, some schools feel like the students feel more supported because there's a GSA there, or students feeling just a lot of difficulty? I don't know what you're hearing, if there's trends or whatnot that you're hearing.
I think that for many teenagers in general, high school is very difficult, and I think especially for any kid that is different, even when they have an abundant amount of support, high school has a really good way of making you feel really small sometimes. And the space that we offer at the Rainbow Room is to allow kids to take up space, to spread out, to feel at home. I forgot your question.
Oh, just well, no, just wondering, if there was any, I guess if Rainbow Room specifically has either programs, are you connected with the schools at all for any programs in the schools, or is it really
So we're connected with some public schools. I've been to Neshaminy, Pennsbury, Truman, and have worked with their GSAs there. Unfortunately, some of the schools are a little bit more apprehensive about having Planned Parenthood coming in and doing education, and that's just a battle that we have with public schools in this area in general who, don't believe that honest sexuality education is, they find it problematic, I guess, a little bit, and they don't know how to integrate it into their schools. So we try really hard to reach out to the public schools, to private schools in the area. So we got some bites and some goodbye shoes away. Yeah.
Bob, did you have a question? And this will be the last one. So.
Years ago, when I was really working, I was the school psychologist at an area high school, which will remain nameless. But I had two young ladies come to my office to complain. The complaint was that they were not allowed to walk hand in hand in the hallway between classes, but the heterosexual couples were allowed to hold hands, kiss in the stairway tower. Nobody bothered them. But these two kids legitimately felt persecuted. Do you run into any of those kinds of things in the schools you work in now?
Something like that, not quite so much, but definitely more of like refusal from administration to acknowledge that like queer kids exist in their schools is kind of just like the bigger fight in general, in terms of like, you know, people bring their boyfriend, you know, boyfriends go to prom together, girlfriends go to prom together now. It's not quite as like frowned upon, or, you know, it's not as big of a deal anymore, but the kids are still not, they're still not necessarily getting the support they need within the school just because it's not as hostile. Like, I think that's a misconception, I think in general, is that because generally people have more of an understanding, especially of the LG part of LGBT, that now people are really becoming confused and more aware of and trying to understand trans issues. And so that's kind of now what's being replaced in schools. We're kind of at the same place we were 15, 20 years ago with trans issues that we were with LG. That's so hard to say. Lesbian gay issues. Yeah, so I would say it's just it's like a different font now. It's not quite the same persecution, but there's still not support in the same way. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ray, for
Thank you.
speaking to us tonight, and just I think that folks, that folks are aware that the Union for Reform Judaism, the Religious Action Center, and also NIFTY, which is the Reform National Youth Movement, have been very, I think, very kind of forward-thinking in issues for LGBTQ plus teens, especially. You know, we have a lot of these spaces where where kids come together. Young boys, young girls, non-binary, gay, straight, etc. And so what you'll see oftentimes in a reform setting is when people go around the circle and introducing themselves using pronouns. And that's something that is, I think, newer to a lot of us in this room, but becoming very typical for a lot of our teenagers, especially those who have been involved in the NIFTY spaces. Overnight, the residential camps, overnight camps, are really, I think, forward-thinking and addressing how to place and how to house transgender youth. In a particular cabin. What I've seen certainly in the camps that I've been involved with, both the Camp Harlem up here in the Poconos and also Camp Newman out in California, is that the kids, the teenagers, really like no issues. It's like these are our friends, these are our buddies. It really really doesn't matter at all. And luckily, we're getting to the point where some of the parents are getting more and more comfortable with this with this kind of changing understanding. So I think that Ray, as you were saying, like maybe 15 years ago, like gay and lesbian, the L and G and that would seem to be very kind of maybe got a better handle on that. And now we're still trying to make our way through transgender and non-binary, but we are in an evolving place, and it's really great to know that we have a space here that is a safe space for our teens and for our adults and for our families who have gay or lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer youth or children, and we want to continue to be that place, that open and safe space here in Bucks County. So thank you, Ray, for coming tonight. Thank you, John, for the work that you do with Planned Parenthood and on the board, and Ray for your work there. And we just are so